Dr. Richard Harris is Australian of the Year, along with his friend, Dr. Craig Chellan. They're the cave guys, the anaesthetist and the vet who brought the Thai children out of the cave, the wild boars, the soccer team. Well, them and a lot of other people, they were key to it. Now, I thought I knew this story, but I didn't. I've now read the book written by the two of them, takes you through it. The appeal in this book is it is real, it is unpretentious, it's a raw explanation. Two men, experienced cave divers, medically trained, doing the impossible, getting those kids out. But it is told without self-glorification. There's a lot of humour in it, there's a lot of honesty in it. I think it's a classic Australian story told in a classic Australian way. Dr. Richard Harris is with me. Good morning.
G'day, Neil.
I want to start with your dad.
Oh, that's tough.
Well, he didn't expect to live long because the family died. His brother and father died, before 50?
Yeah, for early 40s, heart attacks, one on the tennis court, one on the dance floor.
He was a respected surgeon in South Australia, but he dedicated his life to pleasure.
He absolutely did.
Because he didn't think he was going to live.
No, well, him and his two brothers all thought they were destined to die in their 40s, and I think they all told their wives-to-be that when they met them and said, look, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So he was very dedicated to his job, but he was equally dedicated to all his pastimes like fishing and birds. He was a great bird watcher, and he loved a glass of white wine and a smoke.
Smoke?
Oh, shocking. A vascular surgeon who smoked.
Okay. I should hasten to add here, he died at 88.
He did. So his mother lived to 96, and she was the smokiest, drinkiest old girl you'd ever meet, and she was a hoot, and so he got the right genes.
Well reported that he died while you were in the cave. We'll get to that in a moment. But his philosophy on life intrigued me. And it is unusual, as you say, for a surgeon, a vascular surgeon, to be smoking and drinking and partying and fishing and chasing birds, looking at birds. That's his philosophy in life. What's yours?
Well, I've certainly got a bit of that in me. I love medicine like he did, but I very much have always been of the philosophy that you need to have a life outside of work, and I've pursued that earnestly. And for me, it's always been the underwater world, which has included a bit of fishing and spearfishing over the years, but for the last few decades, just diving, really.
Well, you could be sitting on a pier fishing, but you're actually going down in caves. I mean, it's more dangerous, even though you really know what you're doing and you're expert and you and your friends are well prepared. I mean, you've lost friends. It's a dangerous sport.
Yeah, we always say that as the hazards of cave diving are very obvious, but the risks can very easily be mitigated with good training, good equipment, good preparation.
But why? I mean, you're going along a little tunnel. If you're claustrophobic, you can't do it. It's pitch black. You're trying to get through to somewhere you don't know where. Why are you doing it?
That's the exception to the rule, those sort of caves, to be honest. So we were just out in the Nullarbor Plain. Craig and I took a well-earned little holiday a few weeks ago, went out for 12 days to a cave called Cocklebiddy Cave in Western Australia, 6 kilometres long of enormous, brilliant white, crystal clear passages, truly spectacular and beautiful. And that's why we do it, is for those sort of places.
You say in the book that you're asked, what do you like doing? What do you do to relax? And you said, I like a beer.
Yeah, that probably was the first thing that came to mind. But I don't drink very much, to be honest. But a Friday night, I like having a beer and a glass of wine with friends and relaxing. So
you swear a bit.
I'm a bit of a cusser.
You don't put up with any crap.
Oh, I'm pretty soft actually. I'm easily walked over, but I reach a point. There's a line in the sand where I'll go back at you. Are you still getting time to practice medicine? Yeah, not very much this year. I'm looking at this as a bit of a sabbatical, the mixed blessing of the Australian of the Year, which is obviously an amazing privilege, but it has meant that there's not much work going on. So I'm looking at this year as a break, and we'll see what happens in the new year. But, lots of interesting opportunities and exciting stuff happening. So, I've been a doctor for a long time now. I'm 55. I started medical school when I was 17, so that's a solid chunk of time. And if another opportunity comes now that takes me in a different direction, I think I'm open to possibilities.
So you won't necessarily go back to medicine?
I'm not 100% sure, I have to be honest. There'll be some surgeons that I work with in private practice out there thinking, we saw this coming. But so this is by no means an official announcement, but I've told them I am keeping my options open, and I'll see what's happening next year.
Mind you, I told a few surgeons I know I was interviewing you, and they said, can't you get a real doctor?
That's right, yeah.
It's only an anaesthetist.
Exactly. And look, I've lived with that all my life. My dad was a surgeon, so he started teasing me from the word go when I said I was going to do anaesthesia. Oh, that's disappointing. It's just a long-running joke between surgeons and anaesthetists.
I tell you what, the patients don't feel that way.
They should know which side their bread's buttered on.
One of the moments in the book with that raw honesty I was talking about, you've come out of the cave, you've rescued them. It's done. All the trauma around that and the drama around that and the tension, we talk about that. And you hear that your father's died. And you just totally lose control. Lie on the bed, sobbing, crying, which is a natural thing to do and a normal thing to do and a healthy thing to do. But the fact that you told that in a book, why?
Well, what's to hide? Why be ashamed about, feeling grief when you lose someone who's probably the most important person in the world, who's guided you through life and been an absolute hero of mine. He was just the most wonderful person. Anyone who has met Jim Harris would tell you, he's one of those real nice blokes. He's just got a heart of gold, and that was him, And if I could be half the man he was in terms of the way I treat people, then I'd be very proud indeed.
He knew what you were doing, but he probably didn't know the result?
He didn't quite understand the full scale of it, I don't think. He was just starting to lose his memory a bit. It was still pretty good, but certainly recognised us and knew what was going on. But my sisters and my wife were going to visit him and showing him the newspaper clippings and things, saying, look what he's up to now, sort of thing. And he'd have a bit of a laugh and say, he's always up to something.
Yeah, well, I sense that, you've faded around the world for what happened. You and Craig Challen, you Australians of the Year. I sense that he would have been able to keep your feet on the ground.
Oh, definitely. And my sisters and my wife and my kids. They are all, they put me back in my box regularly.
They're still doing it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a very important role for them, is to keep me level, grounded.
You wouldn't really get tickets on yourself, would you?
Oh, just a little bit sometimes. You can't help it. Everyone tells you you're wonderful, you start to believe it after a while. So they sort that side of things out nicely.
We'll take a break. I'd like to come back in a moment and talk about just what happened there and how it unfolded. Dr. Richard Harris is Australian of the Year, along with Dr. Craig Challen. The book is Against All Odds. It is real, raw and fascinating. To get to the rescue itself, you were in Australia and you got a call from a friend saying, could we sedate these kids and get them out? What did you say?
Yeah, that was Rick Stanton, one of the British divers who'd been there for nearly a week at that stage. And my response was very clear, very emphatic. It's absolutely impossible. Don't even consider it. How can you possibly render someone unconscious and then immerse them for what would be 3 hours out through this coffee-coloured water? It's just inconceivable. But I said, look, we're still happy to come and give you a hand, but you better come up with a better plan than that basically.
What changed your mind?
A process of elimination, realising that there was no alternative. We went through all the other options one by one, and they all slowly fell away, leaving us with this idea that basically we either leave these children in the cave to die a very protracted and unpleasant death, or we give this a try. And I had zero confidence, Neil, that it was going to work.
So when you went into the cave, sedated the boys, and they started to go out, you thought effectively you were killing them?
It crossed my mind that I was actually euthanizing these boys, and I guess the only way I could proceed to do that was this thought that, well, if they're going to die anyway, at least they'll be asleep when it happens. And I know that's pretty poor justification for a plan, but that's kind of what it came down to. I thought, well, maybe there's a glimmer of hope, but I honestly didn't believe it could work.
Even when you did it, you didn't believe it?
No.
Your wife, as wives do, tended to nail it and say, if you kill these boys, it's the end of you.
Yeah, she's much more perceptive than me. I must be stupid or naive or can't think more than 10 minutes into the future. But she said to me before I left, if the boys die, I'm not worried about your physical safety in that cave. You've done this stuff before. I've stopped worrying about that. But I'm very worried about the psychological impact on you. And what about your career? You're going to be the sort of Dr. Death of Thailand forever if these boys die. And I think, thanks, love. That's a cheery thought. I'll be off then.
Did you dwell on that?
No, honestly, I can't sort of do my job and have that sort of stuff in my head. For example, when the DFAT guys said to us, look, if the boys die, you might get caught up in the Thai judicial system.
Yeah, no indemnity.
Yeah, we're working on diplomatic immunity for you, but we haven't got it yet. Again, I just said, look, I haven't got the space for that in my brain. I've got all this stuff going on. I've got a job to do, so let's not speak of it again, basically.
So you can sort of compartmentalise things like that.
I think so, and that's the way I could do this job. I just looked at each of those boys as my next patient. I'll say, this is my job today, is to get this boy anaesthetised and sent on his way, and I can just put them in the workbox. And when you work in critical care medicine, I think you have to be able to do that, because if you let emotion overcome you when someone's basically trying to take their last breath in front of you, you can't function and do the best thing for them. So you work out a strategy to deal with it, and then you can fall apart later, but on the job you've got to have your stuff together.
Would it have destroyed your career?
Looking back, I think it possibly would have. Even with 100% success like we had, there were a few little comments on the social media from other anaesthetists, people around the world going, I wouldn't have used that drug, or I wouldn't have done that. Imagine what that would have been like had any of the kids died. It would have been, the Monday morning quarterbacks would have been out in force.
You used a drug, basically, you used several drugs, but ketamine was the drug that you used, and Craig Challen knew about that because he'd probably used it more than you had. What do the vets use it for?
For anaesthesia in animals, yeah. It's a very good drug. It's got many benefits, particularly for this kind of situation. Not that there's ever been this kind of situation, but we use it a lot in emergency care of people who are, bleeding to death or, really in strife. It's got a very safe sort of profile, and the best part about it is it lets people keep breathing, which pretty much all other anaesthetic drugs really depress your respiration. So it's very important for these boys to keep breathing themselves, because there's no way we could support their breathing. But it's got some nasty side effects, which is why we don't use it for all routine anaesthesia.
What are the side effects?
Just horrible nightmares, a bad trip, basically, which is why...
While you're out?
As you come out of it. So, for these people who dabble with it in the nightclubs, they're really risking having a horrible time, I can tell them.
What did the boys suffer that as they came around?
No, so we took some precautions against that, and using some other drugs in parallel that can help prevent that. And I wonder if kids are a bit less prone to it as well.
Matthew's called in. Yes, Matthew, go ahead.
Dr. Harris, I don't know how to thank you. There would be no words to describe how to thank you, but I wanted to let you know my family in Thailand, very remote Thailand, held a vigil every day, and the seniors, the grandmothers, went to temple every day, voicing your name to temple in their Buddhist temple. In the village, the young children, and I'm a scuba diver as well, wanted me to interpret what you were doing. I can only tell them what, as far as an open water diver, and try to explain your role as a doctor as well. But they were glued to the television. They were praying your name every day, and the boys that were caught there. We can't thank you enough. And the blue tongue lizard that's moved into my garden, his name's Richard.
Good on you, Matthew. Thanks. I love lizards and reptiles, so that's great.
Do you really?
Yeah, I love reptiles. I love snakes.
What sort?
All of them.
Even the venomous ones?
Yeah, I keep my distance, but I like them from a distance.
Do you keep any as pets?
No,
not venomous.
My son and myself would love to have snakes, but my wife has banned it, said she'll be moving out if the snakes move in, so...
I don't. My daughter kept snakes, and they used to escape, and you put your hand into the sock drawer, and there they'd be.
Yeah, we had an experience
Fortunately,
like
they were pythons. So.
We did keep one in Vanuatu when we lived there, and it did escape, and my wife very unhappy that night, I recall.
Matthew, thank you very much for calling. Australian of the Year, you said there are pluses and minuses. Is the minus not being able to practice, or are there other burdens that come with it?
That was tongue-in-cheek. It's just a very busy year, and what an amazing privilege it's been for us to have this role. I think the main thing was we were so acutely embarrassed by the whole thing to start with.
But that's so Australian.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it is. I just, people accuse us of being, too humble maybe, but... we just felt like we're doing a job. I mean, to all the firemen who are out there today fighting fires and this week, they'll feel the same. They're just out there doing their business. And, okay, our job was a bit off-piste. It was a bit more unusual, but no more or less heroic than what all the men and women are doing out there. And I just, when you work in the emergency services like I've done, you just don't feel the accolades are appropriate for doing this kind of thing. But as one very tough schoolboy said to me when I was talking to a class of kids not long ago, he said, "Do you really think you deserve this Australian of the Year thing?" I just laughed and said, "You know what? I didn't, but the way I'm justifying it is to, conduct myself in the best possible way this year and, to try and get around and tell the story and inspire some young people. And if I can do that, then I guess I'll be happy that I've done my best.
You said some fascinating things at the time about not overprotecting kids. Do you think that's got through? I think as a parent myself, I'm guilty of doing that.
Well, we're all guilty of it. We weren't happy for our kids to ride their bikes to school because the traffic's changed so much, and we're all guilty of it. But we all have to just relax and let kids be kids. Let them get out there and make some mistakes, explore their local boundaries, physically and emotionally. And every generation says that the younger generation are soft and worthless. We've all said that. My father said that. His father said that. But something has actually changed with this generation, Neil, and that is the advent of social media and smartphones. And I am greatly concerned about the effect on kids' brains that this is happening. And there's now good evidence that there are physiological changes to their brains happening because of this stuff. And they're not getting outside. Kids sit on their computer screens playing games or stuck on social media. We all know the stuff about bullying and so forth, but let them get outside and get them off the screens.
Well, we have an outbreak, it's almost getting to an epidemic level of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, such things. Do you see a relationship? Do you see again, your father's generation, there were probably people suffering who didn't declare it, but I wonder if they were at the same levels of suffering, number of people.
I want to make it clear I'm not an expert in this, but I've spent the year talking to people about it, and every chance I get to talk to an adolescent psychiatrist, for example, there's no doubt that, it's great that we are talking about it and we're supporting each other and we're all being more open about mental illness, and it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But I worry that we're also talking a small group of people into it by being so overly obsessed by it. And we are guilty of putting people on medication too soon without going through the proper, counselling and, giving the proper period of time to pass, because everyone has bad days, everyone gets sad and anxious. But when it becomes pathological, sure, we've got to deal with it.
Dr. Richard Harris, what's the highlight of your life?
Oh, marrying my wife, mate.
Yeah, what really is it? Kids, marriage, all those things. But put the family side aside. Is it doing something like this in the caves? Is it your medical career? What is it?
Oh, look, the whole thing has been fantastic. Honestly, I just make sure I have fun all the time if I can. I love work. I try and enjoy myself at work. And I love being outside of work and exploring caves and the ocean. So it's very hard to say what's been the best thing. But obviously, being involved in this rescue is pretty hard to beat.
What about politics in the future?
Absolutely not. I'm so soft and thin-skinned. If one person criticised me, I'd fall in a pile.
Well, people ringing now saying you should be Prime Minister.
Oh, well, maybe Craig Challen. Now, Craig's a politician.
Well, he is. I could see that.
Yeah, no, he's tough.
You set him up badly, though.
I try to.
I love the relationship between the two. You get into an ambulance, to use an ambulance to get through and avoid the Prime Minister and get back, the Prime Minister of Thailand, and get back and get some sleep. Who was in the ambulance?
Well, 12 beautiful nurses from Thailand.
What did you do?
I took his photo and sent it to his missus.
And she knew it was from you, so it was all a setup.
I hope so.
Congratulations on the book. Congratulations. Look, I'd love to hear where you go and what you do, because I think it'll be interesting, whatever it is.
Thanks, Neil.
Will you stay a public figure, do you think?
That's up to the public. I don't know. I'm not looking for this, but it is thrust upon me.
Dr. Richard Harris, thank you. Thanks for coming in, and congratulations. The book is Against All Odds, the story of the cave rescue, Dr. Richard Harris and Dr. Craig Challen.